Hey guys, let me make sure I'm recording, and I am. I am recording. Welcome back. We're going to do A Quiet Place. We're going to do day one. We're going to do part one. We're going to do part two. There should be a part three at some point. I'll do that video when it comes out, and there's going to be a part four, which is the fifth one in the series. I don't like it when they do that. Let's get into it. I'm going to do this in chronological order. Chronological. That's not a word. Chronological. Chronological. What was I even saying? We're going to begin with day one. We open on a cancer ward. This is a hospice situation, and a fantastic poet, is doing a wonderful rendition of "This Place Smells Like Poop." That guy's poop. He just pooped himself. Poop, poop, poop. I'm using poop because I just don't want to curse this early in the video. But she's a poet. She is, we find out a little bit later on, published. That's not spoiling anything. If you would like to watch these movies yourself, please exit the movies misremembered. Go check them out because I'm going to give you the full storyline as I remember it. It might be slightly different than how it actually occurred. So we have a woman and her cat. That's the name of this movie, A Woman and Her Cat. And she goes into the city to see a show. The show is a strange art noir nouvelle puppet show, and at one point the puppet child blows up a balloon, and I was trying to figure out how the puppet was able to blow up the balloon. Here's my theory: the puppet had the balloon in its hand the whole time. Then it lifted the balloon to its lips and it started blowing up the balloon. In reality, the balloon is closed and there's a little hose that goes up the puppet's wrist. I know. Why am I thinking of this puppet blowing up a balloon in the middle of a horror movie? Stay with me. We have to discuss this further. And the air hose from the puppet's wrist is what blows up the balloon. Then the man picks up the puppet and he moves it, and the balloon pops, and the woman cries. I think this is a metaphor for you have cancer and are going to die. I don't know what to do with that. Okay, she's gonna die. You've introduced us to a main character in a horror movie that is supposed to be a final girl who has terminal cancer. She has fentanyl patches on. Fentanyl, the stuff that makes police officers fall over whenever they smell it. Fentanyl. It's not good for you. Fentanyl. It's available in patch form at your local pharmacy. Tune in later to find out why. So, she goes outside with her cat, and the guy says, "Oh, we need to leave." But the whole reason she came into the city, which I don't know, is because the city has pizza, and she wanted to get pizza in the city. And this guy's like, "We have to leave." And she goes, "Okay, we can leave after we get pizza." And the guy's like, "No, we're leaving now." And she goes, "No, we're going to get pizza, then we can leave." And the guy's like, "You need to get on the bus. We'll order pizza or whatever." And he's like, "I'm your friend. I'm just trying to help." And she's like, "You're not my friend. You're a nurse," which he is a nurse, but there's no reason this nurse can't be your friend. Also, you're terminally ill with cancer. You're going to die. I know that there's absolutely no reason to be polite to people at this point in your life when you're about to die. But at the same time, put your feet in this guy's shoes for a minute. He watches people die all the time, and he grows to like them as human beings, and he's with them during their hardest, toughest parts of their lives. If you don't like discussing terminal illnesses or cancer, you've come to the wrong movie. Because this movie needs to have a trigger warning on the poster. Hey, if you had a loved one die of cancer, don't tune in, because this is going to be cancer talk all the time on WCANCER, the rocket channel, because it's going to rocket you into space, but you're going to be ashes. Speaking of space, meteorites come down and crash into planet Earth, blows up the bus. Everyone on the bus is all, and then she's off the bus, and these creatures are taking out people who are screaming and crying. There's dust, there's blood, there's violence. Thank you. I'm on board for this. Epic. Give me more. It will inevitably give you less. But that's the way these movies go, is they have such a cool creature. But the problem is, the creature is invulnerable to everything but drowning. So is it invulnerable to dust and smoke? Your creatures are... That's for the end of this. We're going to rant about the creatures later on. If you tuned in for the creature rant, check in the description down below. There are no chapters. There are no shortcuts. You're on board. So we are going to... we're gonna jump ahead a little bit. She's caked in dust. Imagine it's fast forwarding. She's out there. People are dying. This is just a scene to show people dying. But there's blood. There's this is as close to like a true blue horror movie we've gotten so far in the series. Not to say the other ones aren't horror movies, they are, but they're kind of actiony horror-esque. This is also more actiony because we have the military there, and I love that we don't hear gunshots. We don't see these things happening. It's just understood. The military is getting their asses handed to them. And these creatures are just a menace. They're just here now. So she's running away, they're running away, they run into a store. And who do we see? But the guy from I'm jumping ahead. Spoilers. Stop now if you'd like to go watch this movie. You're gonna have to rent it. The guy from part 2. Yeah, the island dude who dies because he leaves the garage door open. That guy. Spoilers for part 2, I guess. So, the island guy from part 2 has his son with him, and they're in the diner. And it's really cool because they couldn't give us the main character, John Krasinski. I can only assume he was too expensive. I would have loved to have seen John Krasinski, but we know what happened day one for him. That's jumping ahead a little bit. But I would have loved to have seen some kind of reference or something along those lines. I'm glad they were able to tie in the part 2 with this movie, so it kind of stitches it. In some strange ways, though, it feels as if it is just fan service and completely unrewarded, honestly. But it is kind of cool that they're showing the boats taking off and what, well, they don't show that part, but what this guy was discussing in part 2, they're rewinding it and showing you it in real time. You know what? We'll give it a pass. It was very cool. There's a cat. Remember this? She still has a cat with her. She still has a cat with her, and the cat hasn't made one sound. They haven't talked about how this is a mute cat. I think the cat actually meows at some point, so we know the cat's not mute. But this cat was just blown up in a bus in the hands of this woman. And now the cat is perfectly okay and fine with hanging out in this monstrous place. There's monsters everywhere. There's people screaming. Cat, chill. She has given that cat so many. That cat dipped into her fentanyl. And now the cat, just by being near the patches, is not even an ODing cat. It is something different. It's turned into a different species because of the fentanyl addiction it has. It's an adorable cat. And I think the cat's name is Nikki? Nika? Naki? Nina? Something along those lines. The cat has a name. The cat's an actor. Cat is a standout star of this movie because so far our two main characters are Cat and Terminal, which is what I'm calling the girl with cancer who has terminal cancer. Terminal. So, we have Cat and we have Terminal. The cat's name is Frodo. I will refer to it as Cat moving forward for simplicity's sake. And then, Terminal is the woman who has terminal cancer. So, we are continuing onwards in this story. She is in the diner and they kind of escape out the back and they're in a theater situation. It's a big open theater. I think it's the theater she was just in, honestly. I have no idea. I'm blind. Oh yeah, that's what this channel's about. I'm a blind guy who's going to tell you about the movies he saw. So, they're in the theater and all of a sudden the power goes out. The male nurse is there as well from the bus. He survived. And they're kind of close to each other, looking at each other, and she's talking about how she's going to go get pizza now. And he's like, "What?" And she's like, "I'm going to go get pizza," but she's kind of whispering it, and he's like, it's the end of the world. And then she's like, "Yeah, but pizza." And he's like, "Oh, okay. I need to get some puppets." That's a great idea. So then the power goes out and a generator comes on. And it's like, if you've ever heard a generator, you know the crazy sound they make. That was a solid reenactment of what a generator is like. So he goes to turn off the generator because this guy knows about Jennies, right? In reality, he doesn't know about generators, but he knows about this generator. So he goes and turns it off. They don't hear any sound. That's important, okay? These creatures have the muscle mass to shred a tank. That's in a nutshell. They have the ability to tear a tank apart. They are absurdly strong. And physics would lead us to believe that by being absurdly strong, they're absurdly heavy, because there's no way you can be absurdly strong and absurdly light. That it doesn't normally work out when it comes to the way muscles function. Argue with me in the descriptions. Come on, guys. These creatures are illogical. So we have magic at play because this creature is up on the ceiling and he's about to drop down on the unsuspecting male nurse who just turned off the generator. But he has made no sound. Well, maybe they didn't hear the sound because of the generator. Generators aren't that loud. I've been near a generator. I can still hear something crushing its way across a roof. I can hear people walking near me. Now, maybe I have better hearing than you. I'm going blind. That's not the way blindness works. I'll add a card somewhere here when I get fancy and rich and are able to say, look in that video to see how blindness works with your senses. But basically, in a nutshell, he turns away from the Jenny being turned off and his shirt catches on it and the shirt rips. And we are led to believe by our hands, by the director and the everyone, the writer, that it's the shirt tearing. Rip. That does. Let's make a tearing sound. Come on, let's do this as we can. That is what alerts the creature, not the giant, but that small tear, and all of a sudden the creature's on him. And maybe they're trying to tell us that the creatures are not attracted to consistent sounds. The creatures are attracted to sharp, individual sounds, says the guy in the comments down below arguing with me. I say bullshit. I call bullshit on that. I call full shenanigans. It makes no difference. They at some point in part 1, they're at a waterfall. Why haven't they designed consistent noisemakers like windmills and spin wheels and fountains everywhere to confuse and make the creatures believe other noises are at play here? And why do the creatures attack animals? They make consistent sounds. I don't even know. The consistent sound thing might actually have a hand in why the creatures are not able to hear our heartbeats, because these creatures are basically being played. Basically, they have selective hearing. It's when the director decides the creature wants to hear something, the creature hears it. When the director decides the creature doesn't want to hear something, it doesn't. Because if the creature can hear radio rocket toy from like a mile away, then the creature can hear your heartbeat at 20 feet. That's just the way science works. I'm not a genius by any means. Argue with me in the description. I'm going to say it one last time and then I'm done. Argue with me in the description. But I'm pretty sure that's the way science works. The sound waves travel such a way. And after a while, they would dissipate and split apart to the point of being completely unintelligible to the average human. But a dog's hearing is so much better than ours, and these creatures are better than dogs, theoretically. So then we have the fact that they're in the theater, lights go out, Jenny kicks on, guy dies, creature takes him away. We never see what happens to him. Who knows? And the woman's thinking to herself and is like, I want pizza. Then they hear something outside. They go outside. They see these bridges being bombed. And when we were watching this section, my wife's like, why are they blowing up the bridges? And then my son was like, oh, because the bridges, the creatures can't live in water or whatever, and the bridges are connecting the land. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense. They're isolating the land masses from each other. It totally makes sense. It's actually really cool. But how did the military figure this out in like less than 30 minutes? 45 minutes? Is this supposed to be the next day? Time in this movie is extraordinarily difficult to tell. It just is. It's confusing and convoluted. They don't do a good job. Multiple times people will get knocked out. Is it night? Is it day? So if you have a proper timeline for this film, let me know. And also, how long does a fentanyl patch last? If you know that, let me know. And also, do they make fentanyl patches? If you know that, let me know. And also, are fentanyl patches available in a pharmacy? Why do I keep bringing this up? Well, because the woman is now going to leave the theater and just walk away. And she is going to go get her pizza because she's decided, and I think this is a valid, solid choice. She is terminally ill with cancer. She will die. Creatures are tearing human beings apart. Actually, they don't seem to be too interested in humans. They just hate the sounds we make. Why? She basically needs to go and get her pizza. And I'm cool with that. I actually think that's the best plot line in any of the Quiet Places so far. Probably the best plot line out of 50 or 60% of the movies I've watched is a person who is terminally ill and wants this one thing one last time. I'm on board. That's cool. I can understand that. As a man who's going blind, there are certain pieces of art or certain things in this world that one would want to see. One would want in their memory, oh, I want to see the Taj Mahal. I'd like to see, Mount Everest. Maybe not climb it, but like to see it in the distance. I want to have that memory. But I don't want any of those memories bad enough to travel all the way to Nepal and sacrifice what I have. Nepal? 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 One of those. I don't want that enough to sacrifice the things that it takes to do that. She wants pizza enough to risk her own life and, more importantly, the life of her cat, Frodo, who I am going to call Boots. I'm going to call Frodo Boots because why not? I had another idea there, but it was lost in the ether of my mind. So she goes on this walk. She meets some children after she goes into the store she was at earlier to buy a candy bar. And she picks up candy bars and she picks up a bag and she picks up some cat food. She picks up some supplies. And that's really cool because it's showing, this is a level of survivability that I think is massively missing in a lot of horror movies, especially in a lot of Armageddon type, end of the world sort of things. These creatures are attacking. She's looting. And she's looting to survive. So she's not looting, she's scavenging for survival. I love it. It's phenomenal. She gets the cat food, she gets the flashlight, she continues on. She sees a fountain, and inside the fountain are some children. And she goes into the fountain and gives them a candy bar and then tells them to come with her because she's going to take them to the boats that are evacuating people. You interrupted these children's safe lives in this fountain, which is a genius idea until the fountain stops working. Big brain moment for them. To take them to a boat, which we're going to find out is a horrible concept. Long story short, Terminal just probably killed these kids. So she joins the crowd, she's taking the children to the thing, and she points them towards the boat and says, go, and they head out. They're being very quiet. This is an ASMR film. If you like ASMR, you're going to love this movie. If you don't like it, you're going to hate this movie because they whisper all the time. And I'm like, why couldn't they have a deaf person? Why? I like the concept of having that deaf individual and then having the sign. I'm not even going to attempt to do sign language, but having the sign language there. I know one sign language you do, like, you chest out, or you do it from the face to the chest. You go out and then you go to your chest. That means Blanco Basura, which is white and trash in sign language. Yeah, I know one sign language thing, and it was learned to insult someone one time, and it was a solid insult. I wasn't insulting the individual who knew the sign language. I was using the sign language to insult other individuals to that person. It made them laugh. It was a solid effort, well worth it on my part. So, the Terminal drops the kids off at the boat, and then in a very, very cool scene, Terminal literally goes against the crowd, which is like a, kind of like a nod to going against the grain, to walking your own path. It's right out of a 1980s Apple commercial. And if you don't know what commercial that is, stop this now and go Google it. It's phenomenal. Just Google all 1980s Apple commercials. They're insane. I love them. Terminal goes against the crowd with Terminal's cat. And at some point, Terminal loses her kitty cat. And Boots runs off on its own. Boots, Frodo, Naki. And so Boots, Frodo, Naki is at a subway entrance that's been flooded. And Boots is up there on the handrail looking down, and Boots goes, meow. And this dude surfaces and looks up at Boots and is all like, a cat. Yes. And follows Boots. And Boots finds the woman again, because cats are well known for being able to find their people in city settings. This isn't what cats are known for at all. In fact, that cat would have been eaten by a monster multiple points. They couldn't literally show that. In my opinion, Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls, the greatest sin they made in that movie was in the first 5 minutes when he loses the raccoon. And that's not spoilers, guys. It happened in the first 5 minutes, but it's very, very sad. So, we have her reconnected with the cat, but now there is this extra guy who's following her around. We're going to call this guy Eric. I don't know if his name's Eric. Eric is played by Eddie from Stranger Things. The only person from Stranger Things to go on and do great things, which is be in a Quiet Place movie. I love that for Eric. So Eric is there following the woman around, being real weird about it because Eric's having this like mental breakdown and he's very scared, and she kind of takes mercy on him and has him follow her around. There's a very cool scene where she returns to her old apartment and her key is gone because she kept the key under the mat in front of her door. But we're in New York City, so that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Completely, I mean, maybe keep it inside the mat if you have a special mat that you can like tear apart in an emergency situation to pull out your key. Like, you know, you made this incision and you can, I don't know, get the key out of the mat somehow. Sure, maybe, but you didn't do that. And also, I'd still be scared to leave my key on the floor. I would just always have extra keys with me, right? Like, I would put a key in my shoe because then you always know you have an extra key with you. It's in your shoe. You get a new pair of shoes, you're going to put a key in your shoe. That's just what you do with your shoes because you're a shoe guy in New York City who needs a key. So the key's not there, but there's a thunderstorm outside. It's raining. And so she has Eric, time his kicks on the door to when the lightning flashes. And I loved that. That shows a really cool, interesting, evolution of how they are going to survive, how humans are going to survive in a new world of silence, which I love. I love, because I'm writing a book about how humans can survive in a world of darkness. Not to be misconstrued with White Wolf's World of Darkness. This is just what happens when a key sense of yours is taken away. And I know Bird Box kind of did it, but I don't like Bird Box because you can't see the creatures. I don't know. It's like got a mythical part to it. Sort of like these creatures. I believe they're grounded in science, but they just needed to tell us at some point that like they have titanium skin or something. Like they have titanium integrated into their skin. That would make sense. Yeah, sure. Bullets aren't going to pierce them at that point. And they are super lightweight. And because they're made of titanium, literally they are an organism that has integrated metals into their system because of carbons. Because they're made of these hard carbons or whatever, they can do these crazy things. But they didn't do that. They didn't do that route. Maybe I'm waiting for the metallurgist in part 3 to tell me what's up, because I want that. I want a college professor talking on these creatures for like 20 minutes, please and thank you. I should ask a college professor about these creatures. So then we have them continuing in her apartment, and she's showing him photos, and they're kind of bonding, and she's like, I'm going to go get pizza, and there's a thunderstorm, and they cry, and it's like lethargic. They understand. They come to this idea that this is their reality now, and it's almost like an ending. But this is also the end of a day, I believe. So we wake up the next day, and I think she's going to leave Eddie, which she does. She leaves Eddie behind in the apartment. She continues walking on. Well, Eddie's not to be taken for a fool. He followed her. But then they get chased into a subway somehow, some way. And in the subway, they're walking along, and there's a creature behind them. And then they have to go into this water scenario. And then, when they're in the water, they find out that the creatures can't float. So the creature falls in the water and dies. Maybe. This was a very dark segment. I was going off the descriptive audio during this moment. That's when they arrive at a hole that's in the ceiling for them, and they swim up to it, and it enters a church, because that's the reality, is a church with a hole. And I think a meteorite might have come through the church and created a hole in the floor, and then fell into the subway. That's what I think happened. The scenes in this movie are some of the best post-apocalyptic destruction scenes. If this was a Blumhouse, which I don't believe this was, but if this was a Blumhouse, he's changing the way he does things or he's doing things better, because I loved this movie. I thought it was phenomenal. It had excellent sets, excellent scenes. And if you want to know what happens, stop watching now. I'm only at about the halfway point. Go watch the movie. Come on back. So, Eddie and her get out of the... I have an itchy nose. I don't know what's up with the tip of my nose. Is itchy. Eddie and her come out of the hole into the cathedral, and there's a whole bunch of people sitting around praying, and there's people on the ground, and there's a pastor quietly giving a sermon, and it's like, oh, cool. These people understand this is the end of everything, and what they wanted to do, their pizza, was to go to church. I believe this is called the St. Augustine Cathedral. I don't know what this cathedral's called, but they're there now, and she's having withdrawal because she had fentanyl patches on, and the fentanyl patch has depleted itself. Now, I personally have worked with somebody with high levels of opioid patches because they had scoliosis so bad, they showed me their back one time. He was the manager of mine at Whataburger, and we were going off onto a tangent. So, the manager at Whataburger had opioid patches. Now, the manager at Whataburger kept his opioid patches, which were like insanely high levels of drug. And I got to learn firsthand how high of a level of drug this was, because I was working the grill with a guy, and we were doing an overnight, and it was just me, this guy, the manager, and the drive-through lady, who I will not repeat her name, but she was what a enter 2-letter word here. And I said, excuse me? And she goes, I'm a what a blank. And I'm like, what does that mean? And she goes, I am a blank for Whataburger. And that's the difference. And I said, okay. I was 18 years old. My nickname in Whataburger was Whitey, white guy, smart guy, or white boy. The fourth one was used the most out of all of them. It was a phenomenal, awesome time in my life. I loved working midnight shift at Whataburger. Super cool. But this guy I ran the grill with was in his own words, fresh out. And he told me one time, he gave me advice as he was chopping up a hamburger in anger and then thrusting it into the back. I just assumed because he needed to get some anger out. He said, my biggest regret in life is not killing the man. You ever, and he grabbed my shirt, he says, you ever stab a man 7 times, you make sure he's dead before you walk away. And again, I am 18 years old at a Whataburger. What? So, we're at this Whataburger, we're doing the overnight shift, and the manager's opioid patches are in his locker. Well, this guy goes back to the lockers, opens the wrong locker, reaches in to grab his nicotine patches. This is what he said, nicotine patches, and puts one on his arm. I think he just wanted to try out the opioid patches because the street value of one of those things is probably through the roof. But this is a direct cut to a man who was drooling, sitting on the ground after we pulled the patch off, and kind of discussing amongst ourselves, is he going to die? Like, should we call an ambulance? He's telling us not to call an ambulance, because, he's on parole. We're working at a Whataburger. I don't know what's going on. The end of the story is, when we turned around, he had just left. So, he showed up the next day for work, extraordinarily hungover. I guess it was fine. I might have been, that could have been a murder situation. That would have been terrible for me at 18. But it wasn't. So it was okay. But that's opioid patches. So her fentanyl patch, yeah, remember we're talking about terminal, has expired. So she needs a new fentanyl patch. Well, Eric is like, where do I get the new fentanyl patch? And do I find them in a pharmacy? And she writes down what he needs to get. There's a lot of plot points which take place written in a journal that miraculously stays dry no matter how often they are completely submerged in water. More than once. More than once. Okay? Remember that. He goes to the pharmacy. And who does he bring to the pharmacy with him but the cat? Or maybe the cat follows him. Boots is an expedition of a feline. Just going everywhere, doing everything, super happy. So he might find the medication, might not. He does find a flashlight, and he has to follow Boots, because Boots is licking up all this pink goo that's on the ground, and Boots follows it up a pile of dirt, and the guy follows Boots, and they go up the pile of dirt, and what is revealed at the top of the pile of dirt but a field of pinkish mushrooms, and the orangest pinkish mushrooms, that's how it was described to me, I don't know what it really looks like, are growing out of human beings. That's the pink goo. This Boots is eating humans. Boots is officially not a cannibal, but a human eater. I don't know, a humivore? Humivore. We're going to say what are we? Homo sapiens. Yeah. Homivore? Humivore. I like humivore. So Boots has tasted human flesh and hungers for more. So Boots goes up and starts licking and eating some of the mushrooms. And all of a sudden the guy grabs Boots because it becomes apparent there are creatures. And the guy hides from the creatures. Again, so many creatures. His heart is pounding. He's breathing. Can you hear me breathing right now? If you heard that, then this man is dead. But he's not. Eddie survives because the creatures are too busy eating. And there's little creatures. And the baby creatures are adorable. I love them. I think they look awesome. So the guy survives, and we get one last scene of him clutching the cat on a girder as the creatures go elsewhere to eat their mushrooms that they peel open to pull out the fragile little threads that they munch on. I don't know how any of this works. I'm going to have to do a biology video on these creatures. So this man then goes back, and we don't see him get out of the Death Garden, because why would they show us that? It's impossible. Movie magic. He makes it back to the place, and he has the patches, and he has Boots, and he gives her the patches. And so she has her fentanyl, and Terminal is happy again. Now they're going to go finish their run and get the pizza. They arrive at the pizza place, the fabled place of pizza, and it is smashed. It's smashed in. The semi-truck has crashed into it. It's burned out. They are just absolutely depressed at this moment in time. By they, I mean Terminal. They sit down beside perhaps the single most awesome set piece I have ever seen in a movie ever. Watch this. This movie's worth $6 of your hard-earned money to watch this one moment in time, because it is a manhole in the ground jetting out flame. I love that concept because that means the sewers of New York City are burning. That's amazing. It's like the military decided they were going to dump a bunch of jet fuel and napalm into the sewer system and light it on fire, because maybe that will kill the creatures, because maybe they're getting around via the sewers. I'm sure the sewers might even be connected to multiple off the island under the water. Who even knows? It's just such a cool scene. It has such cool implications for this world and just how utterly shit everything has gone to so quickly. So they're sitting there, and they hear burn out in the distance, and they look, and there's a boat. They run towards the boat. I have no idea if this is the correct order of sequences of events, but we're going to go for it. They run towards the boat, and they see the boat, but they also see a whole bunch of creatures lined up on the street. And the woman has a plan. Her plan is she gives her yellow cardigan, the importance of which will happen later. At one moment in time, they make it to a bar, and they have a drink, and Eric shows her a magic trick. And it's adorable, and they become friends. That's what happens at the bar. Back to the beach. She gives him the yellow cardigan, and she gives him Boots. And so he now has Boots and the yellow cardigan, and she points to the boat, I guess. I don't know what happens, because the next thing that happens is she runs away and starts smashing car windows with a crowbar, or a tire iron, or a piece of metal. They never tell me which. She's just smashing up car windows. So the creatures hear the smashing, the creatures are running after her, the guy is there hanging out, being a cool dude, and what ends up happening is him and Boots get into the water, and they go towards the boat, and they get onto the boat because the guy who's on the boat happens to be the dude from way earlier in the theater, who's also the dude who kills that guy when he starts making noise. Totally skipped that part. Who's also the dude who's in The Quiet Place Part 2 with his son, and he's the one who runs the radio station. If this isn't making sense for you yet, hang in there. I'll explain more later. we have 2 more movies to get through, and my entire Whataburger rant like dropped in the middle of that. So we have the guy swimming in the boat. He gets on the boat, and then whenever he's on the boat, he reaches into his cardigan pocket and he pulls out what else but a letter from the magic journal that never, ever, ever gets soggy. And he unfolds the letter. If you have ever been fully submerged with a piece of paper in your pocket, you know there is no unfolding that thing. That thing will just tear. No, he unfolds it perfectly and reads as she tells him that the cardigan was important to her and he has to take care of her cat, not feed him too much food or he'll get fat. She doesn't know the cat's on a full human diet now, so this cat is actually like a vampire on that boat, and it will murder everyone else to get back to that pink goo that it craves so much. A dark storyline we won't get to until A Quiet Place Part 5, Felines of the Island. So then we have her back on land looking smug as she watches the boat continue on, and Terminal has accomplished what Terminal has sought out to do. And then she goes back to the pizza place and she pulls a photo off the wall, and oh yeah, those creatures, they didn't catch her. Terminal was too fast for the creatures that can literally tear apart tanks and selectively hear people breathing. Good for you. They don't seem like that big of a threat, but they did topple the entire U.S. military complex, but they couldn't catch Terminal. So, she's got plot armor. She goes back to the pizza place and she finds a picture of her or a very young smiling girl looking at her grandfather. Her grandfather was a musician and he played the piano, and she wrote poetry, and so that's kind of the connection as they go to this pizza place. And it's a beautiful moment. I like this movie. I'd give this movie like an A-, but in the spectrum of this series, it builds a lot of lore in a very targeted way, which I appreciated. I wanted them to show us what these creatures ate. They showed us what these creatures ate. I wanted us to show them this. They showed us that. I want them to show me a creature actually die, and they haven't shown me that yet. They showed me that in part 2 and part 1, but not in this one. So she finishes that, and there's a scene where she's walking down the middle of the street, listening to her earbuds, listening to a song that's like "Birds in the Sky, You Know How I Feel," do 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 do. And then he says, "I'm feeling good." And she unplugs the speaker, the headphones, and so it's understood that now it's playing out there, and a creature lands behind her. And that's the last scene we see. Amazing. It gives me goosebumps now recalling it to you, because it was the perfect ending to this film. Because again, she is Terminal. So the fentanyl patches will run out, and then she will just live in torment until she dies. No, she got what she wanted. She got her pizza. She got her cat safe. She made a new friend, and she got to revisit the fond memories of her and her father or grandfather at this pizza place. That's what she wanted out of life. And then she chose when it was time to exit. And she left on her own accord. In Japan, they do something that is an assisted sort of unalivement that basically, it's going to be basically a horrible 2 weeks, and then your body's going to shut down. You can choose to opt out now. That's what she's done here. Death by monster and, R&B, which is, there's no easier way to go, I think. It's very well done. So, that jumps ahead to part 1, Doom, of A Quiet Place. If you'd like to know more about this Quiet Place stuff, check the description down below. Check the end card that's coming up, wherever it may be. I'm going to make a separate video on part 1 and part 2 because this video has gone on far too long. That was A Quiet Place, day 1. Thank you so much for tuning in. Forget everything you heard about Whataburger, and as always, it's good to be seen. Like and subscribe, all that other jazz. Bye, y'all.